I can take a baseball bat to my neck and I don't flinch. Discipline is the most powerful enabler. Passion runs out, but discipline doesn't wane.
Walter, can you pinpoint the moment where you decided to pack it all in and go and become a Shaolin monk?
It was not easy at all. And frankly, with hindsight, I wonder how I found the strength to do it. Most of our energy and time is spent on things that don't really matter. And we don't put enough energy and time on those that really do. You are not your mind. You're a user of your mind, and you learn how to control your mind. So I think that in the very privileged and comfortable modern world, there is a unique opportunity for people to become much more focused on these themes.
Welcome to Untapped, bringing you conversations with incredible people to inspire us and help give us the tools to untap our potential. Today's guest is Walter Gjergja, the first non-Chinese official 32nd generation Shaolin Temple master and secular monk. He was the youngest CEO of a publicly traded company in Australia who transformed his life and dedicated himself completely to becoming a Shaolin monk. I can't tell you how excited we were to speak to him, and I hope you enjoy our conversation with Walter Gjergja. Walter, thanks so much for coming in.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Jake, nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
We should probably start by saying that when we began this podcast together, I asked Winnie, our incredible booker, who sat just in the next door room, if we could possibly interview a Shaolin monk, because I find all of that just so fascinating. And I would love to hear from you what your journey was like. You were born in a small Italian town. You ended up being the CEO of a publicly traded company in Australia. And then you packed it all in to become a Shaolin monk. Can you please just tell us about your journey?
Certainly. So I will share a bit about my journey, and then perhaps we can also dispel a little bit about what it means to be a Shaolin monk and what is a monk, because there is a lot of nuances there. So you mentioned some of the key facts. I was born in a small village in the Italian Alps and from a fairly modest home. And my father worked for a company that actually had its head office in Australia. So through a series of promotions, that's how I eventually went to Australia, because my father was offered a position at the head office. And before that, actually, so in my early teens, I discovered Shaolin Kung Fu. At the time, was just the martial arts aspect. It was a kind of, I don't know if you want to call it destiny or coincidence, but a local man from the local village opened a school in the town. And why I say it's very unusual is because it was a tiny town. It's not like Milan or Rome or something. So it's just fairly strange that in the 80s, a man would open a Shaolin Kung Fu school there. But he studied in his military service, martial arts. It was the boom time of Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan. And he thought, well, what can I do for an extra pay in the evening? Open a Kung Fu school. And I started as a 12-year-old. And initially, I thought it was awful, because there is discipline and you can't talk and you have to do push-ups punishments if you are playing with the other kids. But clearly I didn't think it was awful for very long, because within a year or so it became my main passion. Eventually it became a kind of professional pursuit, professional in the sense of that I would train 5, 6, 7 hours a day, not in terms of the economic returns, because it's a sport with no money. So my father often joked that if I dedicated half the time to, I don't know, tennis or football, I would have had a very different career. And I won the Italian championships, the European junior championships. I was like 15, 16. And then I was uprooted to Australia. And I continued there. There, the Chinese community is very big. There are, Chinatowns. So there was a kind of higher level of teachers, without taking anything away from my Italian teacher, but he had limited experience. There was people who had studied 30 years in China and then migrated to Australia. So my studies went up a level. I won the Asian Pacific Championships and so on. And then towards the end of university, I had to kind of pack it all in, because I had to look for a job. And then I had a kind of conventional career that you've already mentioned, although very fast, perhaps not so conventional. So I went to consulting, and then to an investment fund, and then to a startup. It was the internet boom time, like mid-90s. And I found myself being the youngest CEO of a listed company in Australia. But somehow it didn't really resonate with me. So I was in a very fortunate position by social status and economic status, but I was still harking for this, practice that I had. I was still doing, but much, much less, to the point that I decided I'm going to make an exit and take a 6-month sabbatical and go to China. And the 6-month sabbatical became something like 8 years. And here I am today.
Did you not miss your old lifestyle? Obviously, you was very successful. You was earning a lot of money. A lot of people would be in that position going, I've got the perfect life now. I'm earning a lot of money. I'm doing a job. What made you do that? And did it scare you to do that?
Actually, it was a very difficult decision. And it was also a decision that was contrasted by a lot of other people. Friends and peers thought a range of, I'm being very reckless to I'm totally crazy. There was the range of opinions about my decision making. My parents were clearly very worried, and it was not easy at all. And frankly, with hindsight, I wonder how I found the strength to do it. But I'm glad I did it, of course, because I clearly found my passion and my mission, if we want to call it that. But it was very difficult because also it meant actually throwing it all away. You used the correct word at the beginning. Because what I found is that once you are 1 or 2 years away from the business circle, you lose your network. Also, the network that you had, start thinking that you are somewhat weird. You've left at the peak of a young career to go do something totally odd. Also, you more or less spent all your money. You had to give up stock options. You know what I'm talking about. So in the end, I kind of lost most of my money and lost also most of my network, which is what you build your business career on. So I did kind of throw it all away. And there was moments in which it was very scary. But somehow the pleasure that I was getting from the practice made it all worthwhile. And also it taught me a lot. It taught me, for example, that all of those wonderful things that you mentioned, the nice car and the nice apartment and so on and so forth, it's amazing how well you can do also without them. And it's amazing how there is a freedom in simplicity that you cannot have otherwise.
Can you take us through what it means to become a monk? So as Jake said, you pack it all in. You pursue a life with rich discipline running through your routine. What were you searching for? What is the end result? When you become a Shaolin monk and you've spent all of that time practicing things that hopefully you're about to tell us about, is it enlightenment that you're looking for? Is it a free mind? What is the point of it?
Actually, I think that's one mistake that we make. We always look for something, and there's something that we're looking for, it's somewhere else, and so we miss the present time. I think that the wisest thing I did was that when I decided to go, I was not thinking about becoming a Shaolin monk or a Shaolin master or disciple. I was not thinking about staying there 6 months or 6 years. I was thinking about going there, because it was a practice that I had already been doing, obviously, since my teenage years. So it was something like 15 years by then, my early teens to late 20s, about 15 years. And I had accomplished a lot already in it. And I thought, I want to go to the source of this and taste what it's like, with no expectations and also with no particular desires, no goals. And so it became a kind of living the experience in the moment rather than looking for something and seeking something. It's a bit like happiness, There is no way to be unhappy more easily than to constantly look to be happy, Just live the moment, and in that moment there will be the essence of the happiness that you're seeking.
So you said you'd been training it anyway because you've been doing the Kung Fu, but how did it change when you actually moved to the monastery and it was all day, every day? Can you talk me through a 24 hours of how a Shaolin monk kind of operates from when they get up to when they go to bed? How does that look like?
Well, first of all, and we will touch perhaps on this later about what it means to be a monk and the different types. There are different types of students in Shaolin. There are people more focused on the physical practice, more on the philosophy, more on the medicine, more on the religious studies. There are monks that practice very little physicality and a lot of religion and philosophy, and vice versa, a lot of physicality and a little philosophy and religion. Everybody has to do a bit of all subjects, but the balance of those subjects depends on the specialization that you are choosing. So in my case, one of the main differences was that I became more and more interested in the philosophy and the wellness and health side of things. So I started looking more at that, not only the martial arts. But also the other aspect was that the martial arts intensity, obviously, at the temple is much, much higher, even than what you would do normally, as a kind of professional athlete, let's say. One interesting thing is that I've discovered that this idea that we have of recovery in the West, it's perhaps a little bit skewed, although of course you need to have some kind of active recovery. You cannot go all out every day. But it's amazing how much the body can build a kind of understanding of the practice to a level where you can push yourself way beyond what would normally be considered overtraining and not overtrain. In Shaolin, if you choose the more physical aspects, you're training 7 to 9 hours a day, 6 days a week. And on the day off, there is some kind of review training and so on anyway. So you are training to a level that would normally be considered tremendous overtraining, and yet you never have muscle soreness. You don't get tired. You have very high levels of energy. I think because of the correct periodization of the training, alternance of themes, you will have 1 hour hyper-intensive, but then you have 1 hour of flexibility and mobility. Then you have 1 hour of Qigong, which kind of rebuilds your energy source. And then again, you have an hour of high intensity. So I think that there is some nuances that we can also learn on in Western exercise physiology. And I like to always combine these two things, especially in my current work. I like to combine a kind of ancient wisdom and modern science.
I'm not expecting you to be able to break down your experience over all of the years becoming who you are today into a simple bullet point. But what would you say was your main takeaway from becoming a monk?
My main takeaway is being the present. The second one is discipline trumps everything else. Discipline is the most powerful enabler. There is talent and passion. We always look to be passionate about something, but passion runs out. And when things are hard, sometimes passion can wane, but discipline doesn't wane. Discipline keeps you going through even in these moments of valleys and peaks. The next one is perhaps cliche, but you will fall down, and life is more about how you get up rather than avoiding the falls. You will have the falls. Don't worry about them. Worry about how you get up, your resilience. And the last one is let the magic of life kind of come to you, So not go look for something. I need something. I need some magic. I need some, but to just live to the best of your abilities, be the best that you can be in the present, and let life kind of reveal itself to you.
Would you define discipline as simply doing hard things when you don't feel like doing them?
Discipline is a complex subject. I think that's the first step in discipline. Do the hard things even when you don't really feel like doing them. Then there is a second layer, which is realize that the hard things are actually not the hard things. There are other hard things in life that fortunately none of us are perhaps doing right now, and we are very lucky about that. Let's think about things like chronic illness or severe, loss or whatever else. So realize that in some way what you think it's a hard thing, it's actually a blessing. I mean, I'm able to run up the 1,500 stairs from the temple to the Damo cave every morning carrying a guy on my back. Is it physically and mentally hard? Yes. Is it a hard thing? Well, no. The very fact that I can do that makes me one of the easiest people in the world, And then I think that the third layer is when discipline just becomes part of who you are, Sometimes I speak with people now very often. I conduct some public speaking and so on. And they ask me, how many hours a day you train or you meditate? And I say, usually I train a couple of hours, meditate half an hour to an hour a day. And they're like, oh my God, that must take so much discipline, and effort. And it actually takes zero effort. It's like, pardon the poor analogy perhaps, but it's like going to the bathroom. Do you take effort to go to the bathroom? No, it's a natural physiological thing that you do in the day. So it's the same thing. So I think that there are the three phases in which discipline evolves throughout your approach to discipline.
When you became a full-time monk, what were the biggest three sacrifices you had to make?
There were none that I actually felt that I couldn't, but there were some that were more difficult than others, of course. One is the comforts of modern life. You're sleeping on a hard bunk. You're eating the same food every day, unless you go down to town and eat something out.
Do you have that liberty?
Yeah, you have that liberty.
Can you go down to town and have something else to eat?
You can, of course, within the constraints of, the day is a very full schedule and timetable. The temple is several kilometers from the village. So frankly, you're not going to go down to the village very often. So you have the possibility, but probably when you have a gap, you have a nap, or you write in your journal, or you sit around and relax. The other one is, to get back to your question, is probably this kind of relations that you would normally have outside of the temple. So friends, family, girlfriends, partners, and so on and so forth. When you're in the temple, you are surrounded just by the temple community, and you build very strong bonds and friendships there. But you don't have those kind of normal, let's call them for us, friendships and relationships outside of the monastery.
Are you allowed to have intimate female relationships or intimate relationships?
When you're living in the monastery, no. When you leave the monastery and you go to secular life, you are a free person that can build a family, build a school, build a business, whatever you wish. There are some interesting caveats, and we're starting to touch perhaps this idea of what is a monk. If you leave the monastery and you live secular life, you are not a monk, first of all, although very often Shaolin disciples that are teaching in London or in Paris or wherever else, they wear the robe, they teach the culture, so they say, I'm a Shaolin monk. But they are actually incorrect. They are not monks. They are now disciples or a secular monk, if you still want to attach this word monk to your title, or masters, or whatever you want to give them a title. And one interesting rule is that the moment you build a family or you build a business, the Shaolin philosophy also imposes a kind of responsibility of what you build. So you can't build a family and then say, you know what, this life in society is too complicated, there are bills to pay, there are things to do. Bye-bye, I'm going back to the monastery. No, you would not be welcome back to the monastery. You have a responsibility now, you need to take care of your family, you need to take care of your business or whatever it is, and so on and so forth. So you have total freedom to move between these two worlds. But if you create a set of responsibilities in one, well, you are committed to that and you should stick to that.
So there's no real room for failure then? So say you leave the monastery, you want to set up a business, the business isn't going that well, you feel that the correct thing to do is just to pack it in. You then can't go back to the monastery because you haven't essentially given it your full effort.
No, this you can do.
Okay.
What you can't do is, for example, recklessly close the business and leave some people without a job. Or, abandon your wife and kids because it's too hard to pay the bill, take care of yourself, I'm going back to the monastery. This clearly you cannot do.
Can anyone, in your opinion, become a monk, a Shaolin monk or a master? Or do you have to have a certain character or edge to you? Do you need to be a naturally able, disciplined, competitive person that has an ability to really grind it out? Or would you be willing to take on, say, somebody that was struggling with alcohol addiction or drugs? Or what is the kind of general setup? What is the most common reason, should we say, for somebody coming to the monastery to spend time at the monastery?
So this is a very complex question. First of all, I would like to start from the word master that you've mentioned. Master is an interesting word because it's mostly used in the West. Okay, so in the West, anybody who wears a nice uniform and maybe can do a kick, is a master. In China, you're a master.
You should see his kick.
Yeah, I heard, and I've seen some photos.
He can fight.
I know.
Yeah.
He has a profile.
I'm not fighting you. Yeah, that's not going to happen.
But what's interesting is that in China, when you complete a set of studies, or at least when you, let's say, join the Shaolin family, so you enter the right kind of flow of lineage, you receive a name. That means that you are part of that lineage. You are undergoing some study journey within the lineage. But it doesn't say that you're a master. You are part of the lineage, but maybe you're a beginner in that lineage. The master is kind of an implicit title that comes when you've shown that you are teaching a lot of people, you have a lot of knowledge, you have some disciples perhaps, so you naturally become a master. Other people appoint you as a master. You cannot appoint yourself as a master. Your teacher cannot appoint you as a master. It's a kind of peer review.
The master-disciple relationship obviously sounds very religious. Is religion a core theme in all monasteries?
Sleep is the most impactful and natural performance-enhancing tool at our disposal. Without it, my body would simply not be able to recover and repair itself after I go for a run or a workout. It is essential to maintaining and enhancing our well-being. With Whoop, I'm able to track my sleep every single night and how it affects the type of activities I choose to do the following day. Think of sleep as your bank balance. The best thing is that every single day you get the chance to deposit more into the bank so that in the long term, you withdraw in the form of energy expenditure when you need it most. Whoop breaks down sleep so as to take the guesswork out of the equation. Not only do you get guidance each day around how much sleep you need based on your activity that day and what your optimal time to go to bed is, but with Whoop, you get a detailed analysis of the quality of your sleep and what you can do to be improving it. In addition to monitoring your sleep, you'll also get detailed insights into your recovery, stress levels, strain, and feedback on how your lifestyle choices impact each of these metrics. If you are interested in taking control of your health and wellness so that you can excel in all aspects of your life, you have to go and check out Whoop. Go to join.whoop.com/untapped to try Whoop for free for 30 days today.
So Shaolin is an interesting culture because it's actually a blend of three philosophies: Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism. And because it's a blend of these three philosophies, it's much more philosophy than religion. Although there are some theistic elements, there is no deity in the sense that we intended in the West. So Buddha is a person, and more importantly, is a symbol of a number of virtues and of a way of living life. Kuan Yin, which is this female characterization, it's also another symbol of compassion. It's not a divinity or a deity as such. The metaphor is a deity, but the reality is it's a symbolism. The concept of God, when you go deeper than the symbolisms, it's about everything being God, the divinity being the whole universe, and us being little particles of that God, cells of this mega organism that is God. So in that sense, it's religion, but it's far less theistic than what we would normally consider religion. And in terms of this master-disciple relationship, rather than a religious element, I would say there is a familial element. So the master becomes also almost like a second father to the disciple and guides the disciple both in terms of the knowledge, but also the way to live life. The master should be kind of example on how to live life, on how to behave. And the disciple follows that example, follows the master's studies, and kind of becomes part of his family, cultural family, not blood family, obviously.
We've got some amazing listeners that listen to this podcast, but I can't imagine we've got that many Shaolin monks that listen. So how would you apply some Shaolin principles to somebody's day-to-day life? What would you say somebody could do at home to kind of help them if they're struggling, or if they've got anxiety, or if they're just the lack of discipline, the lack of motivation? How would you apply some Shaolin principles to them?
Well, let's start with the most unpopular one. They should wake up earlier. And wake up early is such a simple yet powerful habit, because it's not about this circadian rhythm or, having more time for exercise. I mean, they're all wonderful things. But the main thing is that it starts the whole day with a different energy. If you have to start your tasks at 8 and you wake up at 7:30 because you have everything timed perfectly, breakfast, coffee, metro, and whatever else, the day starts already in a kind of anxiety mode, in a kind of, full throttle mode. If you started, let's be optimistic, 2 hours before, if you got up at 5:30, well, wow, I can relax, reflect on the day, understand what are my priorities, plan carefully, have a cup of tea, do some exercise, perhaps a little meditation, spend time with my loved ones. Suddenly the day has a whole different energy to it. So I think that one easy rule from Shaolin is wake up earlier. In Shaolin, we wake up very early. Clearly, you also have to go to bed earlier, otherwise you don't get enough, enough sleep. Another rule is try not to do everything, but try to understand what are the right things to do and the most important things to do. Our energy is finite, our time is finite, so focus it on the things that really matter. And what I find in modern society is that we have so many time eaters and energy eaters, starting with our devices, and there are millions more, that very often, if we were truly to analyze our day, most of our energy and time is spent on things that don't really matter. And we don't put enough energy and time on those that really do, whether it's physical exercise, time with family, learning something, developing a business, whatever it might be. So I think find what are those things that matter and then make sure that most of your energy and time is put on those. And the third practical thing that I would suggest, and then we can divide it down into how to do it, is take care of yourself. I mean, we are the one constant in our lives. Our family, our business projects, our whatever we wish to do in life depends first and foremost on us being there and being there in our full energy and power and health. If you have that, then you can do anything. If, for example, you're unhealthy, all you wish and all you can do is try to get healthy. So take care of yourself, take care of your physical health, your mental health, so that then you are able to do all of those other things that you wish to interact with in life.
How would you say to someone listening to protect their mental health?
Personally, I have been in moments where I understood that if I hadn't had the fortune to do the practices that I did, I could have been in danger of some mental health issues. As a teenager, I moved to Australia speaking no English at all. And that put me in a position of total isolation compared to the other kids. So I was bullied tremendously and I had to defend myself considerably. And if I wasn't able to, that would have probably put me in a pretty bad space. Then clearly when I made this very drastic life change and career change, there was again a difficult time of many thoughts and many doubts and so on and so forth. So I had several moments where I think the practices in some way protected me. And in terms of what to do specifically, I think that one of the most underrated practices actually today is getting more and more visibility is meditation. Meditation is an incredible exercise exercise not just to keep low levels of stress and to teach yourself to relax. They are very superficial applications of meditation, but the most powerful application is that it teaches you that you are not your mind. You're a user of your mind, and you learn how to control your mind. And when we talk about things like anxiety or panic disorder, I've worked with people with this kind of issues. Panic disorder is basically your mind starting to chase an idea and you not having the ability and the control to bring your mind back. It's running away from you and you can't control it. So meditation is a fairly simple but incredibly powerful exercise, both scientifically proven as well as proven by thousands of years of traditional practices, that can help you learn how to control the mind and how to tell the mind where to go. In Shaolin, there's always this analogy that the untrained mind is like a puppy, and it runs around everywhere. If we had a puppy
That's
here,
mine. Yeah, mine's a Labrador pup. I'm swear it's all over the place.
Exactly. And you tell it sit here, and if you turn around, it's already over there chewing something.
Usually eating something. Not gonna lie. Yeah,
that's how our mind does, and unfortunately, it chooses to eat not the best things.
Yes.
So
granola.
Meditation helps you tame the puppy and teach the puppy to stay where you want it to stay.
Meditating is something that I've never been able to achieve. I've tried. You sit there cross-legged and you imagine yourself, looking down on yourself, and, then you see the house that you're in and then the town that you're in, and, you drift out. And I've even been guided by a Buddhist before. And it's something that I've never truly understood. So can you firstly explain it? Because I think a lot of people might just think that meditating is being sat still for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and trying to free your mind. But of course, you will have far greater experiences of what meditation truly means. So can you explain what it can do for a person and some steps that you might take to achieve that beautiful mental state that I personally have never achieved? But I would love to hear from you how it's possible.
First of all, you've mentioned exactly the reasons why I call meditation the most low gratification exercise possible. So most people, they sit there, they're trying to breathe, they're trying to think of nothing, 1,000 thoughts come, then finally the 15 minutes are over, I wasted 15 minutes, I could have done some emails, and finally they don't meditate. That's
pretty much it. Yeah.
That's mostly how meditation goes. And I think there are several mistakes. First of all, you've mentioned some of the things, like sit cross-legged and, focus on expanding your consciousness and all these type of things, maybe put some incense and all this kind of stuff. I associate it a little bit as, somebody who has never done any cardio training before, and they buy the special sneakers, the chest heart monitor, the compression pants.
I was doing this an hour ago. Yeah.
And they go out and, run half a K and then they're puffed out. Yeah. So,
we call that all the gear, no idea. That's what we call
nice.
that.
Well, just to be clear, I have some idea, but we're talking about something else.
No, not you, but you understand. So just put on a pair of comfortable shoes, go for a walk, and then when you can walk, jog. And and there will come the day when you will need the compression pants and the heart monitor and everything else. So the same with meditation. Don't worry about crossed legs or lotus positions or incense or special candles. They don't make you any wiser. They don't make you any deeper in your meditation. Just find a quiet place. And at the beginning, actually, don't try to expand your consciousness or do any kind of grandiose mind work. Try to learn how undisciplined your mind is and then how to control it. So what happens is you sit there and you have your eyes closed, and usually I suggest to focus on the breath because, as you already mentioned, the breath is an incredible connection between the body, the physiology, and the mind. So as your mental states change, your breath changes. For example, if you're anxious, you breathe, very shallow and very fast. If you're very calm, you breathe very deep and very diaphragmatic. So the breath kind of connects the mind with the body. So it's a very useful tool. So you focus on your breath. And what you try to do is 10 minutes. You don't need half an hour. Try to stop all your thoughts. So to think of nothing but the flow of your breath, just focus, think of the air going in and out for the whole 10 minutes. Well, what you'll find is that you will not be able to. Thoughts will start coming. What's later for lunch? I have to send that email. What am I doing this evening? And so on and so forth. Now, the exercise, it's exactly there. What happens when the thoughts come? So you shouldn't fight the thoughts because you get in a fight with your mind, you cannot win it. But you should also not chase the thoughts. So, I have to write that email and I will write that. And then, for lunch, I will make this. That's it. Your mind is running, the puppy is running around, to go back to our analogy. So what you have to do is you let the thought pass, the email or the lunch or whatever pass, and you bring the mind back to the breath. and you stay with the breath, only think of the breath, and the next thought will come. You let it pass and you bring your mind back to the breath. And at the beginning, you might find that in the 10 minutes, 100 thoughts come. Okay? But with practice, the 100 thoughts will become 90, 80, 50, 20, until magically there will be one time where you will have no thoughts. And what happens then is you will sit there and think, oh my God, I'm not thinking of anything. And that's a thought, so it will finish.
So you fail on that one.
But the next time you will stay in it. And that is a magical point because first of all, the 10 minutes will pass like 10 seconds. The feeling will be incredibly pleasurable. It's akin of kind of like a maximum state of serenity. Afterwards, your baseline levels of stress will be very low and your baseline level of focus will be very high for quite a while, possibly for the whole day. But more importantly, you've now taken the first step to be able to truly control your mind, which means that when there is the anxious situation, the stressful situation, the panic attack, if somebody has that kind of level of anxiety, you're able to not let it escalate. The same way as you could bring yourself back to the breath, you can bring the thought back from that danger point. So that's the beauty of the practice of meditation. How long that journey takes, subjective.
What is the most extreme place you've gone to with your mind when meditating? This is an advertisement from BetterHelp. There are a lot of misconceptions out there about therapy. People think it's just somebody telling you what to do, but in all honesty, therapy helps you self-reflect and get out of your own way. My Untapped journey wasn't just a physical one, but a mental one too. Having access to therapy has not only helped me overcome challenges in my personal life, but helped me perform better as an athlete as well. It's not about having an instruction manual or being told what to do. You develop tools over time that you can use to be the best version of yourself and give yourself the best opportunity to be healthier and happier. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Build your support system with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/untapped. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/untapped.
So about my own personal practice, if I meditate within 10 minutes, basically I lose connection with my physiological body.
Wait, Howard, pardon me, you can have an out-of-body experience every time you meditate?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that outer body for some people sounds very mystical. What it means is that you stop paying attention to your physiology, which is our most primitive sense, let's say, and you start paying attention on a much higher level. Let's call it on a consciousness level. So normally we pay attention with our body and with our mind. You go beyond that to a kind of deeper consciousness level. And what is interesting is that when you are there, first of all, time ceases to exist. You could meditate for 3 hours or 3 minutes. It roughly feels the same. You are in a deep, deep sense of clarity. And you realize that you are part of everything. So somehow, instead of normally in a normal state, we feel that we are part of our body, we are a physical being. In that state, you no longer feel like that. You feel like you're part of the universe. You are the universe. You're just a little piece of the universe, but you are the universe. And in some way, you feel everything. It's like if there is a bird singing, you are that bird. If there is a breeze blowing, you are that breeze. So you realize the totality of our being. And in some way, it has a profound effect also on our understanding of life, death, of empathy, of many, many things. If we have the time, I can also share with you an anecdote of a meditation experience that it's not mine. It's of an old man that's not alive anymore. And I'm a very pragmatic person. I also studied at university. I still study scientific disciplines like exercise physiology and psychology. So as a pragmatic person, I have no explanation for this for you. I can only provide you the anecdote if you want, and then you will come to whatever explanation you wish. So during one of my times in the monastery, on Sunday, so day off, my friend said, well, why don't we go and see a very old monastery that it's up in the mountain in a parallel valley to the temple, because there is a very old monk staying there and we can visit him and it's beautiful views and so on and so forth. So I thought, okay, let's go. And we started this hike, and it was several hours hike. Actually, it's all these kind of steps cut in the stones in the mountains around Shaolin. So I started regretting it because, it was our day off. We trained very hard every day. And now we're doing like 20 kilometers of steps in the rocks. It wasn't the best idea. But finally, we arrived at this place, and there is this very old guy, undescript age, maybe 75 to 95, depending if he was a youthful 95er or an
old
aged
75, yeah.
75er. And he had a young disciple there, and they see, two visitors, unusual. One of them Western, super unusual. So they were very happy with his kind of toothless smile. He invites us to sit around the fire and have some tea. And he asks through his disciple a lot of questions about me because he'd never seen a foreigner, maybe 10 years before or something. So he asked where I was from and where it is, and in Europe, and there's the mountains. And I explained a lot about my town and so on and so forth. And we chit-chatted, and then we went away. Past 2 or 3 weeks, my friend says, hey, why don't we go again to visit the old guy? And I thought, well, good idea. And let's take up some bags of rice and other supplies, because they would go once every 2 weeks. The disciple would go to the village and buy stuff. But, to take stuff up there, it's very hard work. So we bought some food, brought it up. The guy was ecstatic to see us again. He didn't expect that somebody would go twice up there. Plus, we brought food, so he made the tea and so on. But this time, he wasn't very talkative. He was kind of sitting in a corner, looking at me, smiling, kind of a bit cagey. So I kept asking the disciple, why is the master looking at me like that? And he wouldn't say. Then he asked the master. Master replied to him. Then he didn't quite know what to say. And then he finally explained to us, because we couldn't understand the master. He spoke some very strict local dialect. And he said, well, the master said that your town is very beautiful. The shape of the mountains behind it, it's incredible with these 2 peaks. And the fountain with the fish is very nice in the village. I'm like, how he knows this? What's he talking about? It's the 2 peaks, the fish in the fountain, I have no idea what is going on about. I leave this conversation kind of baffled about this because there were strange details. I'm thinking about this the whole way back. I get back to the temple. I get out the laptop. There was not yet smartphones. And I Google my town, because I even don't remember exactly what the mountains look like. And lo and behold, at the back of the village, if you look from the village, there is 2 peaks that you can see. And no idea, in the village square, the main fountain has fish heads that spout the water. I never even paid attention to it. And it's not something you look at. So next day, I'm hiking back to the guy. So next day, I drag my friend up because I couldn't speak well enough to translate with the disciple. We get up there and I say, how does he know this? And the old guy would laugh and smile and I don't know. And he just wouldn't say anything. So finally, we understood he wasn't going to say anything, so we left. It was getting dark. And on the way down, his disciple said, look, he hasn't explained me how he do this. But he told me that when he goes to his deepest meditation, time and space cease to matter. And he is everywhere and anytime. So I have no explanation for this. He had no internet, no computers. He was in the middle of nowhere, some super old guy. And he described the mountains at the back of my village and the shape of the fountain in the village square.
Is there a general sense in your community that the majority of the world are just disconnected? Like just as a question, are you frustrated that most people don't feel what you feel, or have you learned to just ignore that?
I'm not. I mean, I think I have a level of empathy where, I understand that people focus on their lives and that perhaps they have some boundaries or some guardrails that they can't overcome for whatever reason, whether it's a lack of discipline or whether it's a lack of opportunity. All we can do is share. You've mentioned breath work. You could go even more simple. How many people have metabolic problems and they all know that they should eat healthier and not processed foods and whatever else, and yet they still eat the wrong things and they still have metabolic problems. So should we stop communicating about that? Should we stop preaching healthy eating or exercise? Of course not. So I'm not frustrated at all. I think that actually in the modern time, there are incredible opportunities such as your podcast, perhaps like never before, to disseminate useful information. And I actually think that people are listening more and more. It's also a matter of opportunity, It's not coincidence the most very wise people of the past, bar a few exceptions, but if you think of, Sakyamuni Buddha and many others, they came from fairly privileged backgrounds. And then they chose to go against their privileged background, But they came from privileged background. Why? Because if you have to worry about what you're going to eat for dinner, you're not going to think about the meaning of life or, doing your VO2 max training, okay? You're going to worry about finding dinner for yourself and for your kids. But if you have dinner for yourself and your kids, then you can think about improving your VO2 or finding enlightenment, So I think that in the very privileged and comfortable modern world, there is a unique opportunity for people to become much more focused on these themes. And I hope they will.
Do you envisage going back to the monastery at all?
Well, I travel back at least a couple of times a year to visit my master, my friends, to spend a few days there in the atmosphere of the temple. So I'm there fairly regularly.
How would you feel if me and Spencer wanted to come spend 2 weeks in the monastery? Is that something that we could do?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I actually would love to do that.
I mean, that would be a great 2 weeks.
It would
Absolutely.
be.
I actually took a dear friend with me last time I went there in autumn, and he had a week there. He was every day training, meditating, going to the sunrise sutras, then running up the mountain. He loved it. So I think you guys would enjoy it.
Is there chocolate in the monastery?
No chocolate.
Yeah.
But
Do you have access to a phone
well, of course, you have Wi-Fi everywhere now.
in the monastery?
Of course.
So you can
Every
face-
monk has a smartphone and makes
Really?
videos for Chinese TikTok.
Could-
One of the things that resonated with me also with Shaolin is that there is absolutely no resistance to modernity. In fact, the idea is that great. If science can teach us something that can make our methods even better, wonderful. If technology enables us to, share some good ideas and some healthy concepts with millions of people, which otherwise we couldn't reach, wonderful. So I was not joking when I said every monk has a smartphone, and most of them, especially the young ones, let's say under 30 years old,
Yeah.
they are really making videos every day, showing some kung fu or some training or some philosophy ideas and so on and so forth.
And do you feel like more maybe Western people are traveling over to the monasteries to become Shaolin monks because of this? Do you think more people are opening themselves up to it because they're seeing it on TikTok, they're seeing it on Instagram? Oh, I'd like to go try that. And then maybe they go for a week and they stay there a year because they love it so much. Have you noticed?
Yes,
a change?
This is happening. It's also because of the ease of reaching there. I mean, when I was going there, you had to take a train from Beijing, which went all night. You slept on some kind of bunks. There was chickens. You were the only Westerner they've ever seen. And you'd have little pieces of paper of the station where you have to get out. And if you miss it, you may end up in the middle of Mongolia or something.
Okay.
And then in the temple was very hard life. Nobody spoke English. It was very difficult. Now there is a bullet train from Beijing. In 3 hours, you're in the main city. Then you get a car transfer there. There is Wi-Fi everywhere. People speak English. I mean, it's much easier to reach the temple. So that's one reason. There is also a drawback of what you've described, which the popularization is good. But there is lots of people also that, as we mentioned before, they go there for a couple of weeks, take some photos. Maybe they were doing some kung fu before, come back in the West, say, I'm a Shaolin master,
Yeah.
I'm a monk, I'm whatever.
That would definitely not be me.
I mean, you can always, if you pay a little bit of attention, you can always dig a little deeper in their stories. For example, it's always interesting how they've studied at the temple, projecting as kind of a multi-year, life and then studies, but the photos are always of the same age.
Yeah.
So, okay, if you studied there for 10 years, well, you would have changed a little bit in the 10 years.
Can I ask just a little bit about the kind of process and what it feels like to be at the monastery? So say for argument's sake, Jake and I come and we want to give ourselves seriously to the process. It's not a joke. We want to do it. I imagine the rules are all the same for everyone. Is it a harsh environment?
So times have changed. So once upon a time, it was you'd live in the monastery and you'd be assigned to a class. And you have to respect the rules of the class. So you get up and you train, doesn't matter. And in fact, for the people who are really doing a long-term study plan, so people who want to become monks, 99% of which are Chinese kids, of course, illness, injury, doesn't matter. Okay, unless you really have a high fever or you have a broken leg, otherwise you're training. Your arm is sore, great, you train your legs. Your leg is sore, great, you train your arms. You have a headache, it will pass after running in the mountains for 2 hours. So as adults, guests in 2025, things are a bit different. So, first of all, for example, you would stay in a beautiful townhouse, which is in the village next to the temple. The conditions are very simple, but very comfortable. You have a real bed with a real mattress. You have your own bathroom. You don't have a communal bathroom. There's a nice tea room where you can have a philosophy chat with the master that manages there's a monk that runs the guest house, and he will have tea with you every day and teach about the philosophy and the culture, make you do some calligraphy, explain you a bit more of the nuances of what it means to be a monk and to live in the mountains there. Then you will have a timetable of lessons, which will actually be built based on your needs and also your abilities. So you guys are fit and young and strong, so you will have, running up the mountain or training Kung Fu with a tough master and so on. But if you were elder people, maybe you would just do Qigong every day for your health and then go for a walk to the pagoda forest or something, or speak about philosophy. So the program would be tailored to who you are, to what are your needs, which also means that if you wake up one day and you say, look, I'm really sore and I have a headache, nobody's going to bring out the stick and make you get out of bed, But
What a shame.
There's part of me that thinks if you're going to do it, you want to do it the right way, though. I don't want to stop in a townhouse. I want to stop in the monastery. I want to be with everyone.
This is, I suppose, commercially available to people? So just for argument's sake, how would I book this? Say literally one day we say I want to come and spend 6 weeks, in the temple. We want to take it really seriously. We want to train Kung Fu every day. We want to not drink alcohol. We want to,
meditate.
Not be on screens. And we want it to be rough, right? And we want it to be hard. And we want to learn and we want to grow. How do you book it?
You won't go on Airbnb.
Call you, I suppose.
That you can't book. That you have to contact someone who has the insight. So you have to contact myself or somebody like me.
I'd love to do this for a week or something.
I would 100%.
Because otherwise you have to contact the monastery and you can book a tourist program with the monastery, but then you're staying in a hotel down in town. And let's say foreign visitors manager in the monastery will bring you from the hotel to the temple every day, make you do a 2-hour lesson and then bring you back to the hotel and so on. Most people do that. I mean, I can say that, usually I have a friend there that used to be the one of the bodyguards of the abbot. And he's a very, very tough Kung Fu guy. Now he is around mid-30s. And he's the guy that I usually ask to teach guests if I bring some guests. I say, and
so into it.
This guy is a super tough guy. Like he's a really scary, scary guy. And if I say to him, these guys want the full experience.
Oh, yeah.
If they're lazy, go with the stick.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he'll go with the stick.
I mean,
the stick.
Yeah, how big's the stick?
Yeah, hang on. Yeah.
Do you do weapon training? Because I became quite useful with a broom handle in lockdown.
With a what?
Of course.
With a broom handle.
What? Just
spinning it around.
Yeah, just spinning it around in lockdown.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, pretty much.
Actually, the stick is considered
the
main weapon of Shaolin. They then used all the others, but originally it was only the stick because in theory, Buddhist monks should not have devices that are built for hurting people.
Okay.
And a sword has only one person to kill someone.
Yeah.
But a stick, you use it for walking up the mountain, for looking for mushrooms, for all kinds of things. And then if you need to, you can also defend yourself.
Yeah.
So the stick is the kind of king weapon of Shaolin.
Are you absolutely legend with a stick?
I can use the stick, yeah.
Do we have a stick?
Someone get him a broom.
Can someone go get a broom for
Here there is no real space.
No, well, don't worry. We have a gym.
We've got a gym downstairs.
We have a gym downstairs.
We're ready.
That's so cool. How many push-ups can you do in one go?
I have no idea.
It's like all our serious questions have gone.
Yeah, no.
Can you do one-fingered push-up?
I can do about 30 pull-ups.
Yeah, pull-ups.
In a wanna?
Yeah.
Can you do one-fingered push-ups?
No,
this isn't Kung Fu Panda, mate. That's cartoon shit.
This is one technique.
Like, what I don't understand is, say you, like, it's clear to me that, say, gym strength doesn't necessarily transfer to what you guys do. But, like, to do a 2-finger press-up, where are you building the strength in your
The
hand?
finger itself.
But, like,
people
how
can
you
do it, the finger becomes very thick.
But how, like, so
do
are
like-
you specifically training hand strength?
Yes,
or
absolutely.
hang strength? Like, how are you getting strong fingers?
For example,
like
you can do them on 5 fingers, then on 4, then on 3, then on 2, then on 1. You can do hitting exercises with the fingers. You can do gripping exercises with the fingers.
Hand work is like...
Yeah, because I'm a fairly pragmatic person, I always thought I'm not going to invest that much time to make my index finger strong. There is other things that I can invest my time on, you know. I always had quite a profound interest on the philosophy because I like also to apply Shaolin culture to daily life and to help people, businesses, you know, and so on. So I always thought, you know, whilst I'm going to do the core of the physical work, you know, the flexibility, the strength, the cardio, and so on, I'm not going to dedicate, you know, hours and days of my time to make my index finger strong. It serves me no real purpose, you know. I appreciate the skill, and I appreciate the people that want to put that amount of effort into that specific skill, but it's not a skill that I need in my life.
It's a great party trick.
Yeah.
It's just something incredibly impressive. What, like, to balance 80 kilos on your fingertips or like 2 fingers is insane.
If you are amazed by this kind of, let's say, unusual skills, there is a Chinese guy in the temple who can take full power hits to his Adam's apple, to his throat, and don't even blink. You can punch him as hard as you want on his throat, full power, and he'll just smile and not.
How did he realize he could do
you
that?
You can break sticks on it. He trained it.
You're quite strong here as well, right? Because it's like if you're looking to choke someone, this is a common misconception. Like I do jiu-jitsu. If you're looking to choke somebody out so they can't breathe, going across the front of the throat is absolutely the wrong way to do it. You have to go from the side. So I guess you've got the I mean,
have you ever been hit in the throat?
Well, you hit me in the stomach the other day, and it took me several days to recover. So I'm not taking it in the Adam's apple.
But my brother chopped me in the Adam's apple once, and I couldn't breathe for about.
This guy just wanted to prove that with enough dedication and skill, any part of your body can be trained.
Yeah.
Even the most unusual one, you know. So he thought, okay, what is one of the most delicate, dangerous ones? Well, the throat. Okay. Well, I can show you that if I focus on that part of the body, and every day I spend, I don't know how much he spends. He's like a 40, 50-year-old guy. I think he started when he was 15 or something. But, you know, I spend like half an hour or an hour first hitting myself with a little stick, pack, 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 pack. Then with a bigger stick, then harder, then harder, then harder. By the time I'm 40, I can take a baseball bat to my neck and I don't flinch. And he takes a baseball bat to his neck, full power, and doesn't flinch.
It's just ultimate.
It's a remarkable skill, to be honest.
It is.
It's at the same time remarkable and pointless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
cool.
ever so slightly higher, and he's in all kinds of trouble. You know?
Yes.
But also, you think about the world we live in, having those skills now makes you pretty famous. TikTok and everything like that, do you know what I mean? So if he started putting out videos of people hitting him with baseball bats,
no, he doesn't. He lives in the temple.
It's a shame.
There are a lot of skills in Shaolin which are pursued mostly as this kind of like, I will choose one skill that I want to pursue to show the potential of the human body and the human mind, you know? And it's just a way to exemplify that. It's a kind of symbolism, and it takes years and years and years. So it's part of this Buddhist, Taoist mix of wanting to express to society the potential of the human being, which is far beyond what we expect. And that's what these strange skills are for.
When you say that your corporate life wasn't really resonating with you, and therefore you felt that it was right to take the risk and make the change to your life, do you have any advice for people who perhaps feel in a similar situation, who are listening, who, you know, what they're currently doing perhaps doesn't fill them with purpose or passion, and they're not sure whether or not to continue?
Yeah, I think that, you know, the comfort zone is in some way also a death zone, you know, so we should not be afraid of change, because change is an integral part of life. In fact, life itself is a process of change with 2 big moments, you know, birth and death, and then lots of little changes throughout. So I think we should embrace change rather than fear it. But of course, better if we can make change in progressive steps rather than big leaps. Okay, so we all like the idea of the big leap. You know, I'm going to change everything. But the big leaps are also very dangerous. You can fall and hurt yourself. So if you can make an evolution rather than a revolution, it's always preferable. But there sometimes is the need for the revolution. And so don't be afraid of the revolution, you know, and be accepting also of the mistakes that can happen from the revolution. Mistakes are lessons, and it's okay to make mistakes. In fact, I would wonder if a life devoid of mistakes is not a life poorly lived, because mistakes also means that you're trying new things, you're experiencing new journeys. And so if you're avoiding all mistakes, it's probably because you are in that comfort zone and you're not moving out of it.
I love the comfort zone being a death zone.
Yeah.
I agree.
I love it, evolution and revolution. Love that.
There is a thing called, I think it's a psychological term, is the chasm of comfortable complacency. Basically, when things are not so bad that you will change, but they are not good either. And you just stay there because it's just not that uncomfortable. And in some way, it's almost better if it gets even worse, because that might finally prompt you to break out of this comfort state, and which was not very comfortable to begin with, but it was just not uncomfortable enough.
A lot of relationships find themselves in that situation.
Absolutely.
Marriages find themselves in that situation. It's nothing's done bad enough for the other person to leave. This isn't a shout at my marriage, by the way. I'm very happy. But nothing's done that would seem bad enough for them to leave. So they stay in it, even though they are slightly unhappy. They're not happy every single day.
It's the same with alcoholism and drug addiction.
Same with everything. You always have an excuse to stay.
At the same time, I think that it's important to accept that we can't be happy every day, and there is this delusion of like, why aren't you happy? And you should be happy, and as I mentioned earlier, I think there is no greater way to be unhappy than to think you should always be happy, Life is made of peaks and valleys, and it's okay to be happy and sad and to have joys and sorrows. But what's important is to understand how to keep yourself in a kind of serene state, and serenity is a way to travel through life where you manage the sorrow and the sadness and the unhappiness in a positive way. It doesn't crush you. And you also enjoy the joys in a positive and balanced way, because otherwise the joys can make you kind of crazy and you can lose yourself in the joys or in the excess or in the success or whatever. So serenity should be this kind of emotional baseline that lets you truly enjoy the happiness and manage the sadness in a positive way.
But I like as well what you said about the taking smaller steps, because ultimately, in my opinion, if you work hard and you try your best and you achieve things, even if they're small things, and you're better this year than you were the year before, and you're growing and you're evolving and you're learning, you'll have a sense of pride that you can kind of feel happy about. And I've been both things, it's when you're abusing alcohol and you're sleeping late and you're not fulfilling your potential, and you're not even giving yourself the option of fulfilling your potential because you're allowing yourself to drift into states that you know to be wrong, is when you suffer the most, because you're aware that what you're doing is wrong and you're not giving yourself the opportunity through discipline to change and be better. And I think as long as you try to be better, you've got a much better chance of being happy.
People refer sometimes to myself as a master and to other people as masters. But actually, we all have the master that we truly need already with us, and it's inside of us, And most of us know what we need to do and who we need to be. And very often, if you just give to yourself the same advice that you would give to a friend or to a loved one, probably in that advice, there is everything you need to know. And then it's just a matter of doing what you said you will do. That's the simplest but the most powerful life hack, I think, that exists.
We have found this conversation so thought-provoking. Thanks so much for taking the time to come and see us.
My pleasure. My pleasure. It was a great pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Wach. Cheers. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Is there anything more important than your brain, body, immunity, and overall health? It's a good question. I personally don't think so. That's where Vitals by Heights comes in. It's 20 essential nutrients packed into 2 daily capsules. Think high-impact B vitamins, omega-3s, and vitamin D3, everything you need to feel alert, stay active, and keep up with life. No nonsense, no fillers, just proper fuel made by those who know exactly what they're doing. I used to be a bit of a skeptic about supplements, but I quickly realized that diet and exercise weren't enough to be at the top of my game. I needed backup for my brain and body, and Vitals quickly became a part of my daily routine, keeping me sharp, focused, and somewhat sane. Honestly, just give it a go and see what it can do for you. You've got nothing to lose and so much to gain. Get 20% off your first month subscription at heights.com/untapped or use code UT20 at checkout.